I recently shared a video here on YouTube about how I plan my week, and this video did quite well, so I decided I would share with you how I plan my day. When I looked into other videos on daily planning here on YouTube, I found that there was some really chaotic information out there. Like, the way people be planning their days is chaos to me. I could never. The routine that I've created has helped me to become a lot less stressed day to day and allowed me to make sure that I'm still getting what I want to get done while not coming away from each day with this kind of demoralizing sense of not having done enough, which I think the current methods that I've seen around daily to-do lists and putting all of your tasks into your calendar, generally I've found that it's way too chaotic or way too complex, and I'm hoping that this method will be useful for you. The concepts that I'm going to be talking about in this video are related to a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. It's probably the most famous productivity book that's out there. I feel like these concepts have just stood the test time and time again, and it's just something that's really helped me with my productivity, so I highly recommend checking out that book. I use 3 tools when it comes to planning my day. One is the good old-fashioned pen and paper. I currently am doing 3 A4 pages a day in this bad boy, and it's a plain paper, no rules notebook. And that is generally where I'll get out a lot of my brain dumping tasks I need to do. But also, I'll often end up doing kind of a free-flowing dialogue about what the day is going to look like. Usually, I'll end up doing this maybe early in the week, and I'll be doing this for the different days in the week so that I have a sense of what the week looks like. The second tool that I use is Google Calendar. I know I used to not use a calendar, and now I could not cope without a calendar. I use Google Calendar for tracking all of my appointments and all of my deadlines, and anything that's actually time related, specific dates, birthdays, things like that. A couple of times you will have seen me on this channel showing what my Google Calendar looks like when I'm trying to show a specific schedule, but I actually never put my work times into my Google Calendar. I only put in things that are actually mandatorily happening at a given time. So that's medical appointments, I do personal training appointments, classes that I've booked, classes that I'm teaching, meetings that I have, deadlines that I have, and people's birthdays. Pretty much that is all you will see on my Google Calendar. If we were to put everything into our Google Calendar, it creates 2 problems. One is that when you inevitably have to change the plan, because maybe you end up getting another meeting that you weren't intending to have, it disrupts whatever plan you've put into Google Calendar, and that's annoying. The other issue is if we're putting in these schedules into our Google Calendar, it can often distract us from the actual things that are important on that day. So when I look at my calendar, I just want to see what absolutely has to be done at a certain time on that day. Otherwise, there's a chance that I will forget about it. It's happened to me before where Google Calendar is reminding me all the time about like my deep work blocks that I have coming up, and then I forget to join a meeting because I haven't paid any attention to those Google Calendar notifications. So I only use it for the stuff that actually has to happen at a given time. That's where the kind of paper planning, scheduling for the day comes into play, because that's usually what I'll do to map out my day. But Google Calendar is like the Bible. So that cannot change, whereas the schedule that I make for my day can kind of change. The third tool that I use is Notion. This will be where I track all of my tasks. I do not believe in the daily to-do list. I think it is really outdated, but it's still something that I see a lot of people using. It's still something now from time to time I will do myself. If I am in ultimate chaos mode, if life is chaotic, which you will have seen in some of my vlogs earlier this year, life was chaotic. I was surviving day by day, and that is a time when a daily to-do list comes in handy. But if you are not just surviving day by day, but really trying to focus on a long-term sustainable way of working, where you'll also be able to think about bigger picture items of work, then a daily to-do list is not it. I instead keep a rolling to-do list of all of the things that I need to do, and that's what I keep in Notion. The purpose of this list is really to make sure that anytime we have a thought about something that we need to do, we write it down and we put it in that rolling task list. If you don't, if you're just focusing on what needs to be done or what you'd like to do today, there's a fair chance that when you sit down to actually do that work, your brain will remind you of the stuff that needs to be done tomorrow, next week, a year from now, any time that you have the time to do a task. And that's really distracting. It's also really overwhelming. And the first year that I ran the business that I currently run, I spent so much time thinking about things like this until I eventually adopted this system of just writing everything down, keeping this rolling task list, and figuring out how to eventually get through all of these to-do list items. So generally when I'm doing my weekly planning, I will do a big brain dump and try and collect all of the different tasks that will have come up. For time constraints, I'm not going to explain what that kind of task organization process looks like, but I would recommend checking out my recent video on how I plan my week because I go through it in much more detail. But essentially, for each task, I'll try and figure out what's the next action item on that list, as in what is the actual next step I need to do. I'll then organize that by context. What context does it need to be done in? Is it an email task? Is it a phone task? Is it a task I can only do at the office or only do at home? And so on. This just means that when we're going to do tasks, we can organize them by context to avoid context switching, which tends to slow our productivity very much. I'll also organize it by time and energy level needed to do the task. This just, again, helps me to work better so I can figure out how much time I need to work on a specific task and then figure out, based on the time pockets I have throughout the week, when can I fit in these general tasks. These are the tools that I use for helping me to plan my day and keeping a productive routine. Specific planning that I do on a daily basis revolves around this acronym called GWEN, which I invented. So each letter stands for something that I like to plan for the next day, and I'll generally do this planning at the end of my workday. I don't like to do it right before I go to bed because I feel like that just has me thinking about the next day. So ideally, I'll do this at the end of my workday and then I'll enjoy my relaxing evening. You'll see from the acronym, we're also trying to remove as much choice as possible. We end up having what's called decision fatigue or choice overload, which can really hurt our brains. And it's basically trying to figure out for our future selves the next day, how can we limit the choice as much as possible? The things that I struggle with specifically, I've encoded into this acronym GWEN, but you might have other specific things that you struggle with on a daily basis that I would recommend figuring out a way to plan the day before. G stands for go, which is, do I need to go anywhere? So that involves looking at my Google Calendar, looking at the appointments that I have and figuring out where things are, figuring out what my routes are going to be to those locations, seeing how much travel time is needed, and adding in a bit of travel time into my written down schedule. So that then I'll know, when do I need to wake up? When am I going to get home? All of these different things. Alongside this, I also like to take a look at my errands list, which will be a specific task list I have of different errands I need to do. This is important because sometimes you'll find you're passing by a place and you're just not thinking about it, but when you get home you're thinking, oh, that's so annoying, like I could have picked up this thing but I didn't bring it with me because I didn't think about the fact that I was going to be passing through this way. So it just allows us to be more productive. Rather than adding in extra trips, we can instead have a look the day before. Where are we going to be? Are there any errands in those locations or on the way that we can do while we're out and about? For example, my appointments for tomorrow are as follows. At 9:30, I have a counselling appointment, which I have every week, and it takes me about 45 minutes to get there from walking and getting the bus. Then at 12:30, I'm meeting my cousin for coffee. In terms of transport time, I think it'll probably be about half an hour each side. So I'm going to say from 12 till 2, that's pretty much the time needed for that full interaction. In terms of the rest of my time, and we'll come back to this, I usually try and stick to a general weekly schedule. So pretty much every week after I have my counselling appointment, I then go to my family home and spend some time with my dog, bring her for a walk, spend some time with my mom. And usually I'll do a little bit of admin work while I'm there as well. W in the GWEN acronym stands for wear, as in WEAR. What am I going to wear? This might sound trivial, but I have spent too long staring into the wardrobe, deciding on what to wear on a given day. It's something that I definitely struggle with. It's just really, it's the choice. It's not really that I care a lot about my appearance, but it's the decision of what to wear that can sometimes really slow me down in the morning. So the handiest thing for me to do is figure that out the night before. I will often check the weather because we live in Ireland. It's very temperamental. So I'll check the weather the night before and I'll pick out an outfit based on that. Tomorrow is looking reasonably sunny, so I'm going to wear some of my more summery clothes. I don't think I need any kind of rain gear, so that's all good. And having figured out where I'm going to be going, I also know that I'll be doing a good bit of walking tomorrow, so I'll know that I want to wear runners rather than shoes that are not as comfortable. The third step of my acronym is EAT, which is again one that I personally struggle with, figuring out what I'm going to eat. I tend to get really focused on what I'm doing, and oftentimes I'll forget to eat if I haven't planned out my meals for the day before. I often meal prep, but sometimes I don't, and recently I've been cooking more for myself, so often I'll need to remember to get extra groceries to cook dinner. So for example, I don't have any food in the house for tomorrow, so I definitely need to figure out when I'm going to eat. I'll be probably going to my family home after my counselling appointment, and I'm going to steal some eggs there, have a little omelette. That'll be my first meal sorted out. In the evening, me and Jack are going to have dinner at home, but that means I'll probably have to pick up groceries at some point. So that's to go back and forth into my go plan to figure out where am I going to get groceries on the way home so that we can then make dinner. And then the N part of GWEN stands for need, as in what do I need to bring with me tomorrow? Again, I'm somebody who will forget to bring the important stuff. I need to think about it the night before. I need to pack my bag the night before. Tomorrow, I'm not going to be spending a huge amount of time in my family home, so I'm not going to bring my laptop, which means I don't really need anything. The only thing I need to think about is the normal kind of travel card, keys, phone. Once I've planned out all that stuff, I then start thinking about the remaining pockets of the day. So we've established what my appointments are for the day. The next step is to figure out what are the remaining bits of time and to do time blocking. The way that I do time blocking is really I just figure out where are the large blocks of time that would allow me to do deep focused work. Tomorrow I'll be getting home from my morning and from hanging out with my family, meeting my cousin at around 2 o'clock, and then I'm free for the rest of the day. So it makes sense that I'll have a deep work block of about 4 hours from 2 to 6. And then because I like to wrap up work by 6, I'll do that then. So that is my plan for when I'm going to fit in my deep work. In terms of shallow work, I'll see if there's any pockets throughout the day. I'll probably have about half an hour in the morning when I'm hanging out in my family home to do a little bit of shallow work. Usually at this point in the week, my shallow work is just replying to the emails that come in, and there doesn't tend to be a huge amount required, so I should be able to just do all of that on my phone. To make my daily planning more productive, I generally try to follow a weekly schedule. That will allow me to not have to make a decision of what kind of work I need to do on a given day. On Thursdays, my general schedule would be to do research work in the afternoon. I work on a contract, so I do want to rack up some research hours throughout the week. So rather than putting in specific tasks into these blocks, I instead just assign them what kind of work I'm going to be doing. So for example, my now afternoon block is going to say research work. My morning block is going to say admin work for the drama school that I run. I don't like to put a specific task on my schedule. For example, edit paper. I don't like to put those kind of checkbox tasks onto my schedule because I feel that if you don't get that task done, you end up having that kind of demoralizing feeling of having to move that task to the next day. Rather, I will put it down as a more flexible idea, which is work on a given task. My plan for tomorrow is to work on editing my paper. If I don't get it done, I still have time for doing it. Ideally, it will get done in that time, but I'm not relying on that because sometimes there might be something unexpected that happens that means that it takes longer, or something else might come up that I have less time to work on this. So rather than saying, edit that paper, get that done, the way that I write this down in my schedule is I'll say work on editing that paper. It's just a more flexible language around it. So the next day, if I need to do that again, it can just be work on this. and I'll work on it until it gets done, and then eventually I'll move it off my task list on Notion. But that kind of flexible mindset to daily planning and kind of to-do list items just means that we don't have this constant frustrating feeling of not having gotten work done just because we're not ticking things off a to-do list. And I think that's just one of those productivity things that can get into us from time to time, is we feel like we need to be getting all these things done, but putting in the hours is also important. I'll assign the blocks to the different types of work. There'll be 3 or 4 of these deep research blocks. There'll be different pockets throughout the week for the kind of drama school admin work that I'll do. There'll be other kind of blocks for YouTube work and so on. And deciding what I need to do within that block really comes down to looking at my task list and seeing what needs to be done. In the research context, usually we're working on a specific project, so there'll be what's basically next on the list. It's often the case that for my research work, because I really just work on these projects and I work on one at a time, and there's a flow to it where I can't do the results until I've done the modeling, and I can't write the paper until I have the results. So there doesn't tend to be all this different work going on at the same time. It means that it can just be more time-based, and I just put in the hours towards the project. I'll have a general sense of what I'd like to get done in a week, but I find that when I try and actually assign times to that, it's not actually that productive, because I might give myself a week to do something that I could actually do in 4 hours. And sometimes I'll give myself 4 hours to do something that actually takes a week. So instead, I just like to put down what the thing I'm working on is in that time and put the hours towards it until eventually I'll have that task done and I can move on to the next step. When it comes to the more administrative side of the work that I do, the kind of shallower tasks, this is when there can be slightly more overload in terms of deciding what to do in a given period. Usually I will just straight away try to get through inbox 0 when I have just those daily bits of admin to do. At the start of a week, I like to try and get through as many of my smaller tasks or shorter tasks as possible. And then I can take on slightly larger tasks after I feel like I've cleared a lot of the kind of small little annoying items that I need to do. And when it comes to deciding which of those to do next, often there is some sense of time involved, that I'll have a deadline for something that needs to be done. So I'll try and use priority in that way, but sometimes I find it difficult to prioritize. So it's a push and pull at times for me with that idea. I will update you if I manage to get any more clarity on that. That's it. That's how I plan my day. It might have been maybe a little bit unexpected in terms of what I talked about here, but I hope that it was useful for you. And I would love to hear how you plan your day in the comments below. If you're looking for another video to watch, I will suggest some videos that I think will be relevant in this section here. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.